Welcome back, guys. Good afternoon. Hope you had a nice lunch and got a chance to have a chat with some of the exhibitors and get involved in some of the networking. Some of the networking at the break times at these events are some of the best parts of the day. The best conversations happen. This afternoon we have a fantastic lineup of Indigenous companies who are feeding in various ways into the biopharma sector, involved in innovation in various ways, be that through AI, be that through digitalization, be that through transformation of various kinds. So we have an exciting lineup this afternoon. I suppose first off, at this stage, PMTC, at this stage of our journey, we're about to head into the next 5-year phase of PMTC as a technology centre. We have more members now than we ever had before, which is fantastic, and I think it's a testament really to the appetite for expertise, the appetite for involvement in research collaboration, research projects, research project outputs, and the appetite for that biopharma community that we have developed over time. So we're quite excited really to continue that growth in the next phase of operations, but also to provide greater opportunity for collaboration, greater opportunity for our members to be involved in projects. As we saw really in the earlier session, lots of different companies involved in research collaboration, and that's a fantastic way to get involved as a member. I suppose this is just to give you an example of the PMTC community, companies of all shapes and sizes who engage for various reasons. Our success, I suppose, we wouldn't be still here without the community, but also without the affiliated OPOs. ATU were involved this morning, MTU were involved this morning, so we collaborate across the country, across universities and across tech centres to deliver that research. This afternoon, as I say, we have a fantastic lineup of Indigenous companies who are feeding into the biopharma industry. Without further ado, I'm going to ask you to please welcome Ella Kearns from Biopharma Chem Ireland. Ella's going to talk about Ireland's Indigenous biopharma chem ecosystem.
Thanks, Katrina. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ella Kearns, and I am the Strategic Projects Executive at Biopharma Chem Ireland. It's a privilege to be here today to talk about Biopharma Chem Ireland's most recently launched strategy, which is called Together for Others. Together for Others is a roadmap for Ireland's Indigenous biopharma chem ecosystem, or in other words, the homegrown companies that have been founded, nurtured and scaled here from the roots up. But before I talk about the strategy and its recommendations, I want to take a step back and discuss a little bit about why we began this body of work, as well as the approach that we took behind it. So, as most of you know, Ireland's been a global biopharmaceutical powerhouse for more than 50 years. We account for over 10% of global pharmaceutical exports, and 19 out of the 20 manufacturing power horses have sites here. But while that powerhouse was being built, another parallel story was also taking place, and that was the rise of Ireland's Indigenous ecosystem. So we started this body of work back in September last year because we wanted people to learn more about the thriving Indigenous ecosystem that's here, which is made up of over 130 companies and operate across the whole entire biopharma chem value chain. What we also wanted people to understand was that a thriving Indigenous ecosystem doesn't compete with the FDI or the multinationals, but it actually complements it. It's what makes the entire sector more structurally resilient by creating IP ownership that stays here, carrying out the high-risk earlier stages of long-term research, as well as anchoring our supply chains. The relationship is symbiotic, and it makes Ireland more attractive to the multinationals that we want, as well as stickier to the ones that we already have. But before I talk about the strategic pillars in this document, I want to talk a little bit about the innovation life cycle to give you a glance at our unique sector itself. Drug discovery and development is a painstaking science. It takes 10 to 15 years to bring a molecule to the market, and it costs on average 2.6 billion euro. Out of 10,000 candidates that enter the drug discovery funnel, only one of them will become approved and reach a patient. There's scientists, investors, researchers, patients, and so many more involved at each step. And as you can see, each phase has its own timelines, risks, and compounding costs. But what's important to call out here is that even if a clinical trial stops or a company ends, it's not a failure. Think about that IP, that knowledge, that talent that's being reinvested back into the ecosystem to fuel future companies. For example, if we look at Inflazome, which was acquired by Roche for hundreds of millions of euro, even though that company left, the people stayed here and they reinvested their capital and their experience back into other Irish startups. And if we go even further back to the Elan days, which was founded in Athlone in the 1960s, that became a world leader in neuroscience. And the networks, the talent, and the spin-outs that Elan created are still compounding today. So in our sector, its value is never lost, it's just merely recycled back into the wider ecosystem. So because the attrition is so high, because of the nature of this industry, we wanted our message in the strategy to land in a more heartfelt way. That is why we used the Heart Compass approach to write this document. The Heart Compass approach is a narrative framework that bridges economic data and human empathy, and it takes big messages and important data and brings it to life in a way that it is easy for the audience or reader to understand. At the centre of this was the guiding conviction statement, and in our case, it emerged after workshops with stakeholders that when we believe we can back each other, we can change what's possible. The purpose, the ambition, and the strategy's value also revolved around this guiding statement. The purpose being that proving where you come from doesn't limit what you build, the value being about the importance of leaning into the uncertainty, and ambition, which was all about building something that the next generation can inherit and not start from scratch. So in order to lay the foundations for future generations, we first had to map the current landscape here in Ireland and focus on the homegrown companies that already exist. So as part of the strategy, we identified over 130 homegrown companies that operate across the full value chain, from preclinical discovery and clinical development all the way through to commercialization, as well as the crucial supports that the sector relies on. Here is just a snapshot of some of the companies that we have identified so far, and trust me, there are probably so many more out there that we are still compiling. The report also features 9 brilliant case studies, each case study representing a different category, and as you can see here, it ranges from APC VLE Therapeutics, High Tech Health, National Chemical Company, Shorla, the PM Group, Pronav Clinical, Poolbeg Pharma, Innopharma, and Erska, which showcases the calibre of our capability as well as our domestic innovation. What we also featured was an ecosystem support network. So this involves contributions from multiple state agencies, research centres like PMTC, SSPC, venture capital firms, and the purpose of this was to show that the success of these companies is based on a huge collaborative network behind them. So now let's take a look at the 4 strategic pillars which our strategy was built around. These are building the engine, building the infrastructure, building the ecosystem, and supplying the capabilities. So if we look at our first pillar, it's all about funding. And this is about creating the financial foundations that encourage companies to scale here without forcing them to leave elsewhere internationally. This is why in the strategy we are calling for establishing a pre-seed runway, which gives companies in the price range of 2 to 8 million euro to help them cross the valley of death from those early research stages to their first institutional round of funding. We are also calling to mandate an ISIF evergreen fund where returns are recycled back into the life sciences sector. As well as that, we need to mobilise pension funds, so unlocking an estimated 1 to 2 billion in pension capital in order to scale our Indigenous funds here in Ireland. We need to reform the fiscal incentives, so looking at the KEEP scheme and how we can enhance that, as well as expanding the current entrepreneur reliefs beyond the 1.5 million limit. And finally, we need to establish an EU capital navigator that will help companies navigate the complex funding mechanisms provided by the EU. So if we take a closer look at the funding ladder, this maps where our national financial architecture breaks. So if we look at the very bottom at the non-dilutive capital sources, this funds the early stages of research in project-specific fields. And examples of this type of capital comes from Enterprise Ireland, Research Ireland, Horizon Europe, and so on. If we move up one step to the pre-seed stage, as I mentioned, this is in the price range of 2 to 8 million euro, and it funds the earlier stages of drug discovery. However, there is severe limited angel capital available in Ireland. So that is why we're calling for a pre-seed runway. If we then move up to the seed stage, this is where companies require 10 to 15 million to help them identify a development candidate. The supply is also very fragmented here in Ireland, and companies or founders are often left scrambling and putting together different checks when they should really be prioritising the science. And then finally, the later scaling stages, Series A, Series B, and more. This helps companies move through the different phases of clinical trials. And the supply is also limited in Ireland, and it's unfortunate because when companies reach this stage, they're forced to relocate elsewhere, internationally like the US, and unfortunately this means the decision-making and the ownership of their company also relocates to these places. Our second pillar is all about building the infrastructure, and this is about the infrastructure, the physical and the regulatory policies that we can put in place to improve the ecosystem. We're calling to build a national centre of drug discovery to be established by 2035 in order to move Ireland up the value chain, as well as scale the HBRA Innovation Hub and strengthening the resources, the fantastic resources that they already have to offer to early stage companies. We also must provide additional wet lab space to support the early stages of research and building on what's already there by the Pioneer Group, the Arc Hub for Therapeutics, and DCU Innovate. Supplying the capabilities is all about the mobility pathways between multinational corporations and Indigenous startups and how we can make them as frictionless as possible. It also looks at developing, attracting and retaining our own talent pool here in Dublin and supplying them with the appropriate skills in order to encourage them to work in a startup environment or to take that leap of working in a multinational to actually pursuing a different scientific idea they may have. That's why in the strategy we're calling to unlock the National Training Fund surplus and to prioritise skills development in drug discovery, digitalisation and AI, as well as expanding initiatives like the SARP to encourage international spin-in teams to relocate here in Ireland. Finally, the ecosystem pillar is all about bringing together the different players in the entire industry. So from state agencies to startups to multinationals to entrepreneurs and universities and fostering those relationships. It also requires an attitude shift here in Ireland, and it's important also to note that we must embrace when others take risks and back them and redefine failure. Because as I mentioned earlier, there's so much that we can learn from others taking the leap before us. So this is just continuing on from the ecosystem pillar. And then finally, onto my last slide, we launched the strategy just over a month ago at the Biopharma Chem Impact Awards, where we dedicated a plenary panel in front of 400 delegates, and we picked apart the strategy. We also hosted our first ever Biopharma Chem brew the night before in the Horse Show House in Dublin, which was a more informal way of the community coming together, and we spoke about our talent pillar. So now that the strategy has been launched, we're focusing heavily on the advocacy piece, and we're ensuring that these asks are being fed into the upcoming National Life Sciences Strategy, as well as included in IBEC's budget submission and Biopharma Chem Ireland's budget submission. With Ireland holding the EU Council presidency, which starts next month, we have a unique 6-month window where we can shape the European biotech funding and regulatory frameworks from within. So this brings me directly to why I'm talking about our strategy here today at the PMTC Knowledge Day. As I just touched on our 4th pillar, which is about building the ecosystem, PMTC is an example of somebody doing that, where it brings world-class research and meets industry. So in order to enhance Ireland's innovation economy and keep on improving it, it's all about people from all sides of the sector coming together, supporting each other, taking risks together for others. So thank you.
Please give a warm welcome to Alan Burke from Impute Technologies. Alan is the Director of Data Solutions at Impute. He's going to share with you a case study, moving back to the AI theme, challenges and solutions in implementing AI in a GMP environment.
If anyone has any AI that can improve my eyesight, I'll buy it. These are new to me glasses, so. Thank you, Katrina. Yes, my name is Alan Burke. I am the Director of Data Solutions at Impute Technologies. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is AI in manufacturing, hopefully getting through some of the hype and then possibly turning it around to where AI can actually show real value now, right? And our first speaker this morning, Patrick, talked about AI in manufacturing being hard, and that's factual, that's truth. And the reason being really is because of compliance and regulation and so on. AI is not going away, so I suppose the question that we have to ask is how can we adopt it responsibly, compliantly, and in a way that delivers real value? So, everything changes, nothing changes. For anyone working in life science manufacturing, you can probably relate to this. There's always a big ambition to change things, but the pace of change can sometimes be very, very slow. I remember being on a manufacturing plant about 7 years ago, and we talked about moving their data historian to the cloud, and they pretty much called security on me to drag me out. That's ridiculous. That's never going to happen. 3 years later, there's a rush to put your manufacturing systems into the cloud. So when the industry latches onto something and they believe in it, that's when we see real change. That's when people start investing and there's actually a race to who's going to be first. And we can see that now with AI. But the challenge, I suppose, and what the title is really saying is technologies might change, the way of doing business might change, but regulation and GMP manufacturing doesn't change. GMP has always demanded rigor, batch records, change control, deviation management, CAPA. AI doesn't remove any of that. What it can do is make sure your processes are faster, smarter, and less dependent on manual effort. The pharma organizations that will win are those who understand that AI is a new capability deployed into an existing regulatory framework. So I suppose people have experienced this, people working in manufacturing, where you have a big call for AI. Why? We don't know. Everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't we be doing it? It's a real thing, but we need to be careful. Manufacturers need to be careful. I can give you a real-life example. I was with a manufacturer, global manufacturer, about 3 months ago, who were after investing heavily in an AI solution that was going to help them with their massive data problem, multiple ERP systems across multiple sites, and they found that it didn't. But there was a rush to try and get AI in to solve a problem that, when we looked at it, AI wasn't the solution. Sorting their data was the solution. When people say AI and GMP manufacturing, they mean a lot of different things. They might mean predictive quality, using machine learning, to flag batches at risk of failing before you get to QC. All of these are real legitimate use cases. All of them are being trialed or in some cases deployed today, but all of them are running headlong to the same set of challenges once you introduce the word regulated. But in many cases, we see AI being rolled out for the sake of just having an AI budget, or someone in the C-suite saying we should do it. And this leads to a multi-million-dollar AI solution maybe being used for a tiny manual task. The work wasn't done beforehand, before the solution was implemented. The just AI pressure is real. We hear it from leadership teams every week, but AI is not a monolithic thing. It's a spectrum from simple rules engines to sophisticated language models. Key discussion that we always talk about in a GMP environment is the instinct is often to apply AI, where rules-based logic would actually be more appropriate and more defensible to a regulator, which is most important. Also, what we're seeing is a rush towards agentic AI, because this is where we all want to get to. This is where the real value in AI is. In our view, any manufacturer, whether they're in life sciences, pharma, medtech, food and beverage, should maybe slow down, look at your level 1, start working through the levels until you get to your level 4, your agentic AI. Start showing real value in AI before you invest too much in something that's not going to show you the value. And here's where we see most of the problems. I touched on it already. It's completely natural for organizations and humans in general to rush towards the new, shiny, bright thing that's going to solve all my problems without actually looking at what the real problem is. And this is something that we're finding all the time, nearly in every single case, is that the work has not been done in the data fundamentals. The data infrastructure isn't strong enough. They haven't put enough effort into finding out where the data is it contextualized properly? So that's something that we always recommend. That's where you should start before any AI project. The average organization probably has 175 plus enterprise applications, and in manufacturing you can obviously add in LIMS, MES, ERP, QMS, SCADA systems. And that creates a problem for AI in a lot of cases, because there's a lot of data. It's across disparate systems. So to get the best use of any AI solution, it has to sit on a proper data foundation. It's an unglamorous truth, but before AI can really deliver value, you need to solve the data architecture problem first. And I suppose this is where when we go into clients and they start talking about AI, this is where we always come back to. So the boring groundwork. Yeah, when I talk about AI, I bore people because I keep talking about practical AI, usable AI. But again, you can't build a skyscraper on a swamp, and you can't build a successful AI future on a data swamp. So some of the challenges we see in a GMP environment is obviously, one, validation. You can't just implement an AI solution. You can't implement any solution really into a GMP environment unless it's validated. It has to make sure that you are making sure that you're meeting all the regulatory requirements with it. Data quality, which we talked about, is only as good, AI is only as good as the data that goes into it. It has to be auditable, and this is a real challenge. How do you audit what the AI is telling you? Human factor. Change management is underestimated in every AI project. Operators need to know when to trust a recommendation and when they think to override it. QA teams need confidence in the system. Training and role-specific enablement are not optional extras. I've seen organizations that get this right are the ones where the technology was introduced with the people, not at the people. And then obviously finally, but hugely important, security. Hopefully nobody is using OpenAI or ChatGPT to formulate any of their batches or to plan their next new product, because it's not very secure. So these again, real challenges when it comes to manufacturing in the GMP environment. Before you decide to roll out any AI cure-all solution, you need to understand where are your problems. What are you trying to fix, right? So in manufacturing, slow reporting, missed insights, all of these are very real problems. Paper-based tasks, governance and compliance. So there's no AI solution that we can implement right now that's going to solve all of those problems, but maybe there is one that we can use that will solve 2 or 3 of those problems. So understand what your problem statement is before you rush headlong into trying to solve it. That's something, again, that we always try and lead our clients to. Let's find something that's a tangible problem, where we can find a tangible solution in a very realistic space of time that you're going to get real value from. So, if we were to talk to anyone today, we would recommend that you don't ignore the boring stuff. The organizations we see succeeding with AI invested early in data infrastructure, integrations and governance. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. Diagnose before you implement. The best AI outcome we've seen come from a team that spent 6 weeks defining the problems before implementing anything. Follow fast and don't reinvent. I believe that to one extent, but in another level, maybe we do need to reinvent if we keep coming up against the same problems. And I'll touch on that a little bit later on. But what I mean there is, in pharma specifically, there's a growing body of validated AI use cases. Visual inspection, yield optimization, predictive maintenance, document classification, etc. So learn from the peers, learn from your peers, proven patterns. Make AI personal. Adoption accelerates when the tool is directly relevant to the person using it. A QA analyst using AI to draft deviation reports, a production supervisor using AI to surface shift handover intelligence, role-specific, practical, grounded in real work, and make value measurable. We've invested in this. What's our return on investment? So, bearing all that in mind, here is how we have designed, how we build an end-to-end enterprise solution that is a prerequisite for AI in a lot of cases. It starts with your reliable, accessible, and well-structured data, your data foundation. A single source of truth in a lot of cases. So UNS is obviously a very topical subject at this moment in time, but this is where UNS brings real value. If you are implementing AI solutions, if you have a strong unified namespace solution in place, your AI solutions are so much better. Automation tools then are used to orchestrate and process with precision and speed, stop wasting time on manual tasks, and then leverage the solid foundations of data and automation to deliver enterprise-wide intelligence. And really that is the golden goose here. That's the value. If you're implementing any of these solutions, the value is valuable business intelligence that's going to make our jobs easier, is going to make our company more productive and more profitable. So that is, again, is why we work in this way. And in the outer layer then, we always go with discover, making sure you're doing your groundwork, then you design, then you implement, and then you support. You can't just drop in any solution. It's working today and then walk away from it. It needs constant nurturing and making sure that it's bringing the value continuously. Some of our solutions, so this might seem like the salesy part, but everyone else got a chance to do that, so I'm going to do it now, right? So this is some of the solutions that we implement, right? So they mightn't have AI in the name, but they're AI powered or AI influenced. There's pretty much AI in all of the solutions that we have. Again, in a lot of cases, is boring practical AI. But we help companies from the ground up build that infrastructure, that data infrastructure, make sure that it's robust and it's going to give you the results that you want. Information management is eliminate your information chaos, making sure that your data or your documentation and all that is the way it should be. Manufacturing isn't just the manufacturing floor. There's lots of different elements in it, whether that's HR and all that, but we're working with manufacturers in the area of smart finance, where we have automated all of their invoicing, procure to pay, so on and so forth as well. Again, by using AI. And then your document AI is what it says. It used to be called intelligent document processing and OCR and all that, but document AI now, where if you've got lots of documents, it's taken a lot of time for people to go through, let's automate all that process with your document AI. So success can be achieved, right? So again, laboring on the point of practical, achievable return on investment. Where can we invest now to get real return? So, you know, I might have sounded a little bit negative earlier on about the challenges of using AI, but it can be achieved. So, AI success depends on skills, competence, and governance, not just the tools. Many organizations struggle to move from experimentation to real value. Without the structured enablement, adoption stalls, and return on investment is delayed. Staying still means falling behind. Others are investing and will gain an advantage. But at this moment, this is not obviously manufacturing, this is globally in all businesses. 74% of businesses achieved return on investment within 12 months of AI deployment to production. So, again, there's merit, there's value, you just need to do it right. In manufacturing specifically, the organizations pulling ahead are those who have made the foundational investments in connecting their data, in validating their tools, and in training their people. So if someone walked up to me right now and said, what should I do? What would you recommend? What solutions have you implemented where you saw real value? There's kind of three, right? One is in relation of a quality management system. So AI and GMP in manufacturing is here to stay, right? So we already talked about understanding the problem, understanding that you need to get your data foundation right, and so on. But then where can you get the quick wins? So we work with a company called M-Files. It sits natively with Microsoft. It sits on top of Microsoft. Have pretty much said that they're not going to invest in SharePoint anymore. M-Files is now the solution that they've partnered with. AI-powered, use all of your Microsoft applications, but it can manage all your content, help you with your QMS, build your documentation, and so on for you. Proving very successful. So it's a low impact and quick time to value. Earlier on, I talked about following what other people do. Well, what we've done in this case with Kaisoft, and Brian is here who built this, is we've looked at the problems on the manufacturing floor. This has been built by someone who started as an automation engineer, went into system integration, data analytics and all that, so understands the real problems. Understands that if I want to build a report, I might need to get data from the historian, I might need to get it from the SCADA system, I might need to get it from the LIMS system, but I can't find the owners of those systems, or else they won't give me access. So what Kaisoft is a purpose-built AI agent platform for manufacturing, turning natural language requests into structured monitoring, analysis, and reporting workflows. It's built for environments where governance, traceability, and data privacy are non-negotiable. It's deployable on-premise or in a private cloud large language model, keeping sensitive operational data under your control. It's in a beta stage at the moment. We're piloting it with a few clients. We're looking for other people who wish to pilot that, so please reach out. But it's a fantastic tool that's giving anyone who uses it the ability to build real-time reporting, pulling data in from multiple sources, whether it's on the IT, OT level. Okay? And then finally, bringing it back down to less exciting stuff. We do AI enablement training. If you want AI to work for you, you need to make AI work for your team members. And to do that, you need to train them. They don't need to know all the technical ins and outs, but they need to know where is value in it for them. Then you'll get buy-in. and you will start finding that your AI projects will probably work a little bit better. So for us, we've been around 25 years, Impute. We have been working in the area of AI for probably 5 years, if not longer, long before AI became a kind of a boardroom catchphrase. So it's something that we have lots of knowledge in, lots of experience in. Our tagline is less friction, better decisions, and obviously we use AI an awful lot to help allow that happen. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Great insights. Next up is Tim Crow from Workflow. Workflow are a member of PMTC, have been working with us on a number of projects. Tim is going to talk about how digitalising shop floor operations unlocks scalable AI in biopharma.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just to start, I think what Alan said there resonates really well, that our business is similar, and what I'm going to talk about is just another version and variation of what Alan talks about, but it's great to see that what I'm talking about is not conflicting with him. We're given the same message. So I'm just going to give a different perspective here. But when you look back, when I look back over my career, you look like I've been in engineering manufacturing for many years, and there was industry 1, 2, 3. Now I don't remember them. I was around for industry 3 and 4, and then in the last 2 years, that was what everybody was talking about. And then Industry 5 was the next topic, right? I would say in the last year, I haven't seen them in any presentation, and it's almost like they fell off a cliff, and it's AI. And I would say since in the last year and a half, we look at AI within our business, and we look at AI for our customers. And the pace of change that we're, say, doing internally is nothing like I've ever seen before. Even since the beginning of this, since Christmas, we've changed our processes so much in 6 months that we haven't changed in the year and a half before that as much as we've done now. So, and it seems to be getting faster and faster. So what I would say to everybody is, even as a tech company, we're trying to keep up to date. We don't want to fall behind, but we want to make sure we get the balance right. So I'd say in your businesses, as I get into this, is you don't need to panic, number one. If you panic, you're going to make mistakes. And when you look at everybody else, like this is new, companies are trying to figure it out. You do it the right way and take your time and get it right. Because, and I'll touch on it a bit in this, is when you implement AI in your process, in your manufacturing processes, you really only get one shot to do it right, because if the people don't trust it and it falls off, it's much, much, much harder to start it again. Okay, so a key point on the first slide here is AI in biopharma will scale only when execution data is captured cleanly at source. And that's what I want to get into a bit here is, if you take biopharma, where these are processes you'll be very familiar with, and often execution data lives outside the system. So for example, with line clearance or cleaning logs of deviation, you know that you've done these, but often what gets lost is the context of, if there, say for example, if you're doing line clearance, you're signing it off with paper forms. Now I know some of you here might have it automated already, but a lot don't. So you're capturing information on paper, and you're capturing cleaning log information on paper. You probably know when you start and you finished it, but sometimes the context of what happens within that is missing. So it can get transferred into an MES system at the end of the shift, or into an ERP system, and that's the key for AI, is this contextual data that to make sure that you capture it, because AI can use this to drive value. So if you look at a manual versus the future process, so if you take an as is and you take a paper Excel, maybe a basic MES type process, you're capturing information on paper. It could be maybe you're keying some into a system or a mix. Then later, as I said, you're transcribing it, and then you're filing it for compliance, and then quality then are reviewing it and going through the paper files at the end of the run. and then that gets archived away, and you don't really use that anymore because you've no way to access it. It just goes into folders. In the future, and as you prepare for AI, the important thing is to capture the step or capture the steps that the operator are doing. So executed at source, you're capturing as the work is performing. Then you're adding the context automatically. So what machine are you running? What batch you're running? What time? What limits was the machines, etc. set at? Then you capture the data for exceptions. So if exceptions happen, capture that data. That then allows QA then to be more specific around what they're auditing and checking. And that whole baseline then gives you the platform for AI. And AI can use that in the future. Now, in that transformation, in any process, in any change, right, going from manual or semi-manual to automated, there's 3 key components, and that's people, process, and technology. And I was in a pharma company a couple of years ago, and I was asking, we're very hands-on, so in Workflow we talk to the operators that are using our system and we get their input. And I brought up that we need to go talk to the operators, and the engineers working said, no, we don't need to do that at all. I said, what do you mean? He says, we know in engineering, we know what we need. I said, how are you going to roll it out? Oh, they'll be just told how to do it, and a bit of training, they'll be fine. And I was horrified, to be honest. I said, this is part of the problem in some of these, is that you got to engage, you got to get your balance between people, process, technology. Technology, stating the obvious, but sometimes companies make a mistake. Technology on its own doesn't fix problems. You got to have that balance. So in this change, yes, you're going from manual to tech and you're automating, but there's so much opportunity there to get it, good versus brilliant. There's so much opportunity to get it brilliant, and by engaging people the right way. So for example, if you're looking at going from automating some of the data capture, then the people using the process, if you can make their job better, they'll buy into it, and it'll be a much better system. This is, I suppose, the point here in this one, and there's lots in this, but if you look at the bottom here, you got ERP, MES, LIMS, lots and lots of different systems, applications, machines, etc., running in biopharma. And what you see a lot of is point-to-point interfaces. You'll have a SharePoint with data stored there. You might have paper records. You have CSV files going around. And then when you look at how the processes run, paper batch records, then you have scheduling, warehousing, quality, often disconnected. And Excel is very common in all industries, where Excel hangs out of these systems doing some reporting, and that gets shared around an email. And that's, like, I've seen it so many times where you see a report comes out and it's marked as final, and then a day later someone comes out with final. So changes made to it. So then you're often challenging and questioning which is the right data, which one should I be running. But when you're setting out your plan for digital or AI, it's really important to look at your entire operations and your entire system. So map out and understand how your architecture is structured today. How does your process flow? How does your data flow? How are you connecting equipment and machines? Because in the future, what happens in one part of the process can affect can be value add to analysing what happens in another part of the process. So it's important to understand that ecosystem before you start, because often it can get missed. You can miss opportunities, and your AI could be less effective. So when we work with clients, we build out this map, and it gives everybody a grounding of this is where we are today, and then you can move on from there. AI on top of paper doesn't scale. I think pilots was mentioned a lot today, about running pilots and processes. I think when you're running a pilot, a pilot can give a good result, but when you try and roll it out, it's really important to make sure that you're thinking about where it might go in the future, because it can fail or it can stall on the follow-up if you haven't thought about what data needs to transfer to the next process or what data you're capturing. So it's really important to, from a pilot perspective, think about what the next step might be, and how you might connect the dots as you move forward with stage one. So as a business, we do 3 key things. like our business is about digitalization, digitalizing the supply chain and bringing our suite of modules to work with existing systems to give you that end-to-end view. So the key things we do is leaving AI aside for a second, just our goal is AI, but we start off with C, which is real-time visibility of what's happening in your operation right now. Then it's connecting that data or what's happening in one part of the process across to other parts of the process and the equipment that you're using, start connecting it together. And then it gives you the foundation to build AI solutions. But if you look at that process, the value, you can deliver value before you even go to AI. So when you start putting these foundations in place, you can start being more productive. You can start being, having better utilization, better scheduling. So it's not that you have to wait until you have all this in place and then bring in AI. The value can start from project one. And that's the key thing. And we see when we look at why projects fail is that when you start with your first project, it's got to be one that will deliver some value so that the team, right up to the functional levels, that the team see, oh, this is good, this is brought benefit, and then you can move on from there. So it's really important to, as you start planning your journey, is that you should be getting value at every step, and AI can bring you to another level of value. So then, as I mentioned before, you start with mapping out and understanding and get everybody level set on how we're architected today. And then what we always do as clients is build that vision. So where do you want to go? What problems are you trying to solve? And where do you want this to end? So then that you set a journey out. And if you don't do that, every change you make, everybody's question, well, why are we doing this? Where does this fit into to what we're doing? But when you set that vision and you don't have to do it in one go. You set a series of projects and milestones to get there. So every milestone that you go to, you understand where it fits and where it fits in that journey to your end state vision. So in this here, this is the IT/OT roadmap, and there's lots of other elements to it. But if you look at it, you're looking at connecting the systems and machines that you have today, creating that integration and API layer, creating operational data lakes and data warehouses, and setting up your single source of truth so that you don't have conflicting data. And then from there, then all the processes I talked about warehousing, materials, production scheduling, your EBS or EBRs, your lab work, etc., is all pulling central data and is pulling good quality data and good contextual data. And from then your business reporting and then your AI can really start to bring value as you go through your series of AI projects. So it's so important to get this vision right and get this structure right from the beginning. And like we're doing some projects with clients, and we always look at, like, as I said, you could be doing a project in one part of the process, but something that happens way up the other end could affect it. So for example, we work with some clients, we look at the historical buying patterns of customers, and that influences how we set up the production lines. And that, if AI is really, really good at connecting all that together. So when you're looking at it, it's often you can forget the context of everything that happens right through your process. So that's why it's so important to consider all that. So if you look at what AI can do when the data is clean, there's so many things that it can do, but within the process itself, things like detecting drift in real time, identifying issues before they happen, particularly around equipment issues, forecasting demand and capacity, being able to predict volume and load and being able to schedule, making it proactive and not reactive, and optimizing your machines and your production team. An assistant on the floor. We're running a pilot with a company where every operator will get an AI buddy, an AI assistant on their screen. And this is a buddy that helps them to do their job better. So, for example, if they're doing a batch that the AI buddy is planning the next batch to make them sure the material arrives on time, and bringing another, like a digital workforce for supporting every single person in the factory. That's a pilot we're running with a client right now. So it's like a very low cost but very smart and intelligent buddy that works with people. So there's so many things happening in AI. There's so many places it can add value. There's some examples like steering to the golden batch. If you've got all the contextual data around how you've built batches before, then AI can prompt to make sure that you get the golden batch every time. And then the model what-if scenarios. So with AI, you can model, well, if we run, for example, simple as if we run a Saturday, what value does that bring? What customer is going to benefit from it? If we change setup and machines, etc., what can it do for us? So it's doing that scenario modeling. That's almost impossible to do without using AI. There's so many other examples, but that's some of the ones that the practical examples related to manufacturing that AI can bring. So, I mean, within this industry, compliance is critical. I mean, I'm stating some of the obvious here, but what it does when you go through this process, you've got audit trails, you have electronic signatures, different levels of access control. You don't have to go through lots and lots of paper to review by exception. The exceptions come up, you can actually focus on them. And so like compliance is obviously critical in this environment, but it should bring you to us where you're audit ready at any point in time, that you can go back, and if there's any issue, like immediately you can, like even before, without looking for it, AI can bring it up to your attention. So, but compliance is obviously critical, and that has to be a key part of a key pillar for AI enablement. So, yeah, this is an example. We are working with a pharma company here, and the way we run as a business is like, we talk about pilots and proof of concepts. We would work with one facility, bring them up to a level where, generally with pharma or any businesses, multinationals where you have multiple sites, bring them up to a level where they start outperforming by having really good systems, and then look at deployment. So we're doing that with some clients as we set up here in Ireland and move to other regions. So I suppose on the final point then is, AI is an enabler, it's not to fix. So technology does not fix problems, but it's a fantastic enabler. When you have a really good validated process with all your contextual data, AI allows you to scale and bring significant benefits to your business. I think those benefits, I mean, we come back here next year, we'll be talking about things related to AI that we're not even talking about today because it's changing so fast. That's great. But back to a point I mentioned at the beginning is, when you start your journey on this, I think before AI, it was much easier to plan technology. It's much more challenging today. But it's great in one way, but in the other way is when you engage your teams, you got one shot to do it easy. You've got so many opportunities to go back and do it again, but they're going to be much harder. So take your time, engage with partners like ourselves, Alan and others that are talking here, because we live this every day. And when you go through the steps I just talked about, engage the partners like ourselves, then you're setting up for success. One final point from a workflow perspective, I never worry about technology. I don't worry about AI and what it can do as regards developing it and getting it ready. It's about the value, right? We focus on, I always talk to my engineers and project managers, did we deliver value for that client? And that when you're engaged on a partner, that's what you need to make sure is that they're on that partnership and value journey. The technology, like companies like ourselves and Alan's there, we have the expertise. But if you're in manufacturing, challenge us on making sure you get the value. That's what we're there to do, to help. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. That was great. Now we have another PMTC member, CyberLink, who are going to talk about their new technology, which helps to identify and resolve system integration issues before site delivery. So welcome, Sam.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sam Sorensen, co-founder and CEO of CyberLink, the cyber-secure integration device. And this novel solution enables engineers to identify and resolve system integration issues from a network point of view before site delivery. So firstly, for the problem, 75% of large or complex automation projects face schedule delays. One of the reasons for these delays are late-stage network-oriented system integration issues. Here are machines and control systems being provided by various vendors for an end manufacturing customer in Ireland. These systems are only then brought together for integration testing once they arrive at the customer site. At that point, network-oriented system integration issues arise. When that happens, the Irish manufacturer is left waiting for the vendors to arrive on site, then troubleshooting back and forth with them, all while the line remains idle and veering off the critical path of the project. So this results in project delays, increased risk, lost revenue, high costs, engineer inefficiency, and a larger carbon footprint. So the solution to this problem? Well, let's first roll it back before the equipment and control systems are delivered to the end pharma customer site. By connecting CyberLink to each of these systems, engineers are able to identify and resolve those network-oriented system integration issues before the equipment and control systems are delivered to site. Then once the equipment is delivered, the customer can fast-track to physical installation, already knowing that those network-oriented system integration issues have been previously identified and resolved. So as a result, CyberLink saves time, reduces project risk significantly, lowers costs and carbon emissions, increases engineer efficiency, as well as vendor transparency of knowing that the system is ready when they say it's ready. So in terms of the problem and solution from the timeline perspective of the life cycle of a production line creation or upgrade, if you just look here at the conventional method and focus on the system integration testing process, that's comprised of stage 1 being the factory acceptance test, FAT, as you know, and then stage 2 being the site acceptance test, SAT. With CyberLink, the solution is utilized during the FAT and enables pre-SAT tests to occur before site delivery. As a result, the SAT is just then reduced to physical integration once it gets delivered to the customer site, and this then de-risks the project significantly and gives the opportunity to accelerate time to production. Of course, to avail of accelerated time to production, CyberLink would have to be incorporated into the planning stage of the project. However, CyberLink has been used in an ad hoc method in many projects to date, and what's that done is save time in terms of engineer resource efficiency, travel time, as well as de-risking the entire system integration testing process. So moving on to a couple of featured projects that we've carried out. Here's project A. The vendor in Italy here was supplying a full biopackaging line, including a SCADA system and a track and trace level 2 system. On the customer side in Ireland, they had their own track and trace level 3 system, which was an offline copy, just to mention as CyberLink does not connect to live systems. So now traditionally this line would have been shipped to Ireland before a full track and trace batch run could actually be performed. However, by using CyberLink, secure integration testing between the vendor systems and the customer's L3 serialization environment was able to take place while the equipment was still located at the vendor FAT location in Italy. This enabled the customer's production order and serialization data to be securely sent through the integrated systems, allowing the vendor-side SCADA and track and trace L2 systems to execute a full production test using real serialization data. This gave the customer the opportunity to review the overall batch execution and serialization workflow and resolve any issues before shipment, including confirmation that the serialization data flowed correctly back through the integrated systems and onward then to the level 4 layer. As a result, CyberLink was able to then save time of 8 weeks for this customer. They were extremely satisfied that all network-oriented system integration issues were previously identified and resolved before site delivery. And just to note from a customer perspective, whenever there's a customer site involved in a project like this, the offline copy is used of that system, and if that doesn't already exist, CyberLink can supply services to virtualize that system to an offline environment. So then moving on to project B, the implementation of CyberLink involved 3 separate locations working together in real time. The full packaging line was split across 2 vendor sites, while the customer side operated independently with its own offline track and trace L3 system. Vendor site 1 was located on the east coast of Ireland, represented the start of the packaging line, and while vendor site 2 in Germany represented the end of line and contained all the track and trace aggregation functionality. The customer site located on the south of Ireland hosted the L3 serialization system, which then issued the customer allocated serial numbers. So using CyberLink, the customer was able to initiate a process order directly from their L3 system. The batch execution was started at vendor site 2 in Germany and transmitted to vendor site 1 in Ireland. At the same time, serial numbers were then transmitted through CyberLink and received by the SCADA and track and trace L2 at the vendor site in Germany. So vendor site 1, just to note here, was only responsible for confirming the batch start and providing the associated batch audit trail data. All final packaging and aggregation activities were carried out locally at the vendor site 2 in Germany using serialization data from the customer site. So here the customer was able to fully test the complete serialization and aggregation workflow before the equipment was delivered and installed on site. They verified that the serial numbers were being correctly assigned, aggregation processes were functioning properly, and all data handling between the systems worked as intended across the multiple international locations. So during the FAT testing, the customer in this case did actually identify issues with the aggregation steps, and then the vendor resolved these during the FAT rather than waiting until it gets to site, then carrying out these issues and only identifying it after delivery. So using CyberLink, the team in this project was able to save a total of 7.5 weeks while also significantly reducing commissioning risk. So moving on to Project C, I'll only show you 4 today because I don't want to be taking up too much of your time, but Project C, CyberLink allowed this customer to execute MES electronic batch record functions directly from their site in Ireland, while the blending and milling machine was still in the FAT phase in Germany. Core processes through the EBR, such as valve activation, vibration, and blending, were all triggered in real time and received at the vendor FAT environment, effectively enabling SAT-level integration testing much earlier than normal. So the transition then to the actual site acceptance test was seamless. It ensured that there were no integration issues between the two systems, giving high confidence in the system's readiness and significantly reducing project risk. So the team in this project was able to save a total of 4 weeks, again, all as a result of CyberLink. So finally, the previous projects were focused within Europe on an international scale, but this project now demonstrates CyberLink on a larger geographical scale. So in this case, the SCADA vendor was based in Germany, while their partner machine vendor was located in Minnesota in the US. Both vendors were delivering this system to an end pharma customer, and this was the first time that these vendors were actually collaborating together on a project. Using CyberLink, they were able to develop a new machine interface and undergo testing with their SCADA system during the FAT phase, increasing confidence that the integrated system would perform as expected when delivered. As a result, the customer was extremely satisfied with the project outcome. Although it was a relatively small project, the team was able to achieve a total time saving of 3 weeks, while also reducing installation downtime by 50%. So now on to features. Firstly, CyberLink is both portable and versatile. It enables secure point-to-point and uniquely point-to-multipoint fully end-to-end encrypted connections. Another key advantage is that no system reconfiguration is required. CyberLink has been designed to be plug-and-play for the engineers, so existing IP configurations can remain exactly as they are intended for the end customer delivery site. There's no need for additional software to install, no default gateways required, and there's seamless connectivity between upper and lower level systems. Security and control are also critical aspects of the solution. Each unit is pre-configured to each customer-specific project, and each unit is only activated once it has been physically received and signed off by the designated individual within the project team. And finally, it's important to emphasize that CyberLink does not collect any data. All testing activities and communications remain entirely private to the customer. This project shown earlier were based solely on customer feedback, and we have no visibility over what tests are performed or what data is transmitted, as all connections are fully end-to-end encrypted. So just from a cybersecurity perspective, CyberLink uses internationally recognized tunneling technologies. As I mentioned earlier, all connections are fully end-to-end encrypted, both point-to-point and point-to-multipoint. No legacy or depreciated algorithms are used, and CyberLink is ISO 9001 and 27001 certified, and we're currently in process of IEC 62443-4-1 and -4-2 certification. So just to explain the novelty of our solution quickly, these companies in the bottom left are offering long-term remote access technologies for post-production purposes, essentially embedding a device into the machine for a life cycle of that machine for live testing after the production has gone live of certain configurations, whereas at CyberLink, Whereas at Cyberlink, we're providing a novel cybersecure integration device in the pre-production phase where nobody owns the entire infrastructure. We're enabling that multi-system integration testing to occur far earlier in the project. And we are pioneers in this market sector. So to validate this, the companies such as Secomi, as you see on the bottom left, have also been involved in several of the same projects that we have been utilized in, and with each technology providing their own value within their designated area of the project lifecycle. So also just to note in relation to further general benefits of Cyberlink, in many projects, offline control systems are traditionally loaded onto laptops or replicated onto environments and then transported to the vendor or integration site to perform these integration testing activities. This can introduce additional licensing requirements, increase setup effort, and added project cost. Whereas with Cyberlink, the offline control system can remain securely at its original location while still being connected to those remote vendor locations and systems through the Cyberlink units, therefore then removing the need for additional site licenses. So similarly, where flight boxes are used to replicate offline systems, Cyberlink enables those environments to be securely connected across multiple systems, machines, and locations, often eliminating the need to ship an actual flight box to their respective sites. Finally, here's what some of our customers have to say about their experience with Cyberlink, being Astellas Ireland, one of them, and Pack Systems. Full testimonials and full information can be seen on our website. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to visit our stand outside to speak to myself or our co-founder and CTO, Mark Sorensen, who joins us here today. Looking forward to speaking with you, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sam. Great presentation. Our final presentation, last but not least, before a really good Q&A session, EIS Managing Director Darren Grant, an MES expert.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, look, I'll try and do this in 10 minutes so we can keep on schedule and get out. So my presentation is what is AI and digital projects without a firm bottom. A bit of play on words, get a little bit of attention for the last part of the day. Just to give you a little bit of background, if you don't know what EIS is, so it's Enhanced Information Solutions. Globally, we've been around for over 30 years. We've executed over 1,900 projects, and we service 35 different countries at the moment. So the Irish office has been stood up 2 years ago, and we've about 22 people here in Ireland working in the life sciences. So really where we operate is in the manufacturing, in the MES space. We also do e-logbooks, e-forms, and we also service all the different platforms that's out there. So why I'm telling all this is because it leads into the question that we get asked. So some of the clients that we work at, both at a local level and a global level, would be Sanofi, Pfizer, AbbVie, Merck, Regeneron, and there's plenty more. So that's kind of where we deal with projects. So we deal with projects globally. Anything where there's a red dot is where we currently have a project. Anything with the little color dots, that's where we have an office. So we are global. We get a lot of different requests, and AI is usually a topic that comes up quite regularly. So this is why I like this slide. It's nice pictorial where we operate. So if you look, OpsTracker is an application that we have, that we owned, but we also then spend 80% of our time on the MES side. So we do a lot of integration. We digitize all the paperwork that can't be housed in a normal system, like a LIMS or an MES system or an SAP system. So I think, Tim, you were talking about the logbooks for cleaning. Alan, you were talking about other logbooks and forms that are outside of the normal applications. So we're mopping all of that up and gathering it all into one system. And now we're controlling all that information. What do you do with it? So like when we look at it and we're talking about like the project as a firm bottom, we have all this, like, this is the ideal. This is all the shiny stuff that we're talking about. But in reality, this is what I want to get to. So today we've talked, and I was trying to come up with a different subject to close out the day. And it is really about what's below the water. We've seen the projects that are happening, the strategies that are in place, but every time somebody comes to us, this is what we're looking to help out, because we're the integrator. They're looking for us to navigate through what they have and where they need to get to. So a lot of the times they're looking at, well, what are they missing? The legacy systems. So one example would be, last year we did a review study with one client, and they have 6 different MES systems across 4 different continents. So how would they gather all that information together, make it uniform, and then put an AI on top of it? Also the data pipelines, where is the information being pulled from? Where is it being entered? Even just in the last week or so, we were working with one client and they have an MES system, but all their tasks, all their calculations is done in Excel and then put back into MES. So there's a lot of nuances out there. Integration debt and would be a big thing. So you have a lot of systems out there not connected. Is it worth investing the money to get them connected? So these are the challenges that they're looking at. And also documented or undocumented code. So within the different applications, the MES, the logbooks, there is little nuances that and pieces of code that people have inserted in order to get things to work. But how will that impact going to the next version? How will it impact actually even just connecting an AI application to it? And also one of the big things then that's as part of all of that would be technical debt. With the legacy systems, some of them that I've worked on and are still being worked on date back to 1999. And technology has evolved, but the systems that they're still operating hasn't. So with one of our clients, they asked us to do a review of their manufacturing systems and for a global rollout, and they were asking us, well, how much is the technical debt? And while working with them, we estimated that it was 45 million just to get the systems up to today's standards. So there's a lot below the water that needs to be addressed. So some of the questions that we constantly get asked is, can my MES do AI? So a lot of the systems now, the legacy systems, the old systems, no. They were never designed that way. They were there to capture the information for the batch and be able to release a batch. What are other systems doing on the AI? And again, we're saying they're not because they're old systems. There is newer versions coming out, but again, they haven't been challenged. The functionality hasn't been validated. What are my clients doing in the AI space with their MES? Well, due to NDAs, I can't tell you that. So there is some information we can share. We can obviously look at trends and let them know. And what are the use cases for AI? And actually, the BCPI last September, was it, released a great actually study as well on the use cases for the pharma. So talk to Ella or talk to myself. I can give you a link to that download as well. So there are initiatives to find the use cases. A lot of it goes back to what I think Tim was saying earlier, and Alan, the golden batch. How can we achieve and understand what the golden batch is? What the questions that they haven't asked or are not asking is, what are our use cases? And Alan said it, Tim said it, Patrick was the first to say it this morning, like, understand your use case. And then look at what is the strategy and then what is the technology. So they're the questions that aren't being asked. It's what AI can we do? So some of the examples here, just to give you a bit of a feel. We have one company, it's got 30 plants running two different MES systems. Their databases, when you look at them, I call it Germish, so it's half English, half German. And then you can probably guess what the second one is. It's Franglish, which is half French, half English. So the data isn't presented in a manner that lends itself to an AI project. Also, some of the applications are old, and this is where I'm kind of referring back to the diagram there. Some of them still run on Visual Basic. Others are locked, and the codes can't be updated. Each site also has a different version of the software, so it's not a centralized deployment. In some cases, in another company, when they updated their MES system, they had to update 35 servers. So getting all that information, all those databases is quite hard again. And they are all looking for the savings from AI. If we look at example number 2, we're supporting one company that has 24 plants globally. They're running MES. The last version of the software was updated in 2017, and it was ran on Windows Explorer, and they use standard blocks. This is where they have to configure it and put in some Python scripts for decision making. So this is where it's an example of the hidden code. Where would you find that unless you were really digging in the record? And then it's going to take them 3 years to update it and get it up to where it's supposed to be. And again, they're asking us, where can we look at the savings from AI if we implement it? So what would you do? So if you look at Paul Perotti's presentation earlier today, he was talking about MES as well. And they're looking at ways to use tools to make it go faster, like so to develop a framework for a workflow, develop frameworks for testing, and then obviously quick reviews and comparison. And again, that will lead into the golden batch. Sorry, I'll jump that. So some of the technology that we are, so we have partnerships with a variety of different MES providers, different MES systems. Apprentice is one. And why I brought this up, they've just recently released this product, and we're evaluating it with them. And they're looking at now using an AI agent that can go across different business units, pull the information from different sources, and start giving you some information. But these are few and far cases that are out there where people are actually trying to do it in manufacturing. So again, it's maybe one to keep an eye on. And they're predicting that they would be able to have a manufacturing agent. So they'd have maybe an agent in manufacturing, an agent in business, and they can pull in from the relevant systems to, again, give you the feedback on and the analysis and the predictive algorithms for, the golden batch, essentially. So if we bring it back, and I've changed the word foundation or bottom to foundation. Really what I'm talking about is the foundation. It's great to, when AI is here, we have to go with it. But looking at what's below the water, we need to not be scared of it. The cost of the company that has 45 million in technical debt, they'll have to embrace it. It's coming in anyway. They won't be able to release the batches in a couple of years because the system would be too slow, or they won't be able to integrate, or they won't be able to use it for AI. So don't be afraid of it. Don't be scared. You're going to have to do it in anyway. However, also don't try and do everything that's under the water in one time. Do it in bite size, do it in sprints. Define the AI strategy and take into account what's underneath the water. So this will, and what I would suggest here is when you're doing your specifications, when you're looking at new systems, make sure that you have a section in there for AI. You may not look to qualify it, but at least forward think and put it in there. Define the expectations is key. I think that goes back to understanding your business case. And really, as you're doing this, the main thing is the team. You got to set them up for success. So make sure that everything that's below the water that they can see is addressed, and then get into the AI side. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Stern. So the final part of today, just the speakers really from this afternoon session. Sharon Davin from APC is going to run a Q&A, sort of a discussion session with Darren, Tim and Alan, and Mark Sorensen from Cyberlink. So we'll just welcome them back to the stage.
Super, thanks a million. Everybody still awake in the room? Brilliant. Thank you very much. So just want to say it's been fantastic to have the speakers here, and it's a great sample of the incredible kind of the SME, and some multinationals as well, support and the ecosystem around for the pharma industry. So just to introduce, I'm Sharon Davin, I'm Head of Science Innovation at APC. And for those eagle-eyed, so Ella gave us a nice plug earlier, thank you, Ella. So we're in the strategy document there, so if anybody wants to drop in and have a look. So again, we're a national company, a pharma company of the year as well, not to brag, so we work primarily around RD&I solutions for the global pharma industry, and data is core, knowledge is core to everything we do, so it can really feel the pain points around the digital transformation, around kind of the complete, the embracing of AI and the acceleration around AI there as well. So for us, we also have a sister company, VLE Therapeutics, who are licensed for advanced therapeutics for clinical supply. And we're embedded as well with our own platform technology, iAchieve, which again is kind of our CMC knowledge piece, where it kind of is there trying to bring together all of those disparate pieces of data and knowledge kind of into one place for it. So for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you will have noticed a swap out. We don't have Sam, we have Mark here joining us for the panel. It's obvious from today, and it's obvious from everything that we've been hearing, we're in the midst of just a really awesome technology here as well. It is changing, it is driving success. For us in particular, thinking about the pharma industry, it's about accelerating and getting medicines to patients quicker. It's about the support ecosystem around supporting the manufacturing, but ultimately as well, it's about that patient at the end of it. At national level, we have fantastic groups working together on this. BPCI, we're looking at the life sciences strategy. We've a Minister for State now who has a title that includes digital transformation and AI. A lot of things have moved on. Our national funding supports are all there to kind of help the industry and to drive us forward in terms of competitiveness as well. And importantly, places like PMTC and our other national research centres as well to help support the industry. So I'm going to pick up a theme maybe from earlier, and a theme that a lot of you have covered today, and I think it's worth digging into it a little bit more, is a little bit around that pilot purgatory, because I love a bit of alliteration. So it's that piece where there's the energy and the activation energy to get started on something, but how we're getting it through to success has been a bit of a problem. I know Patrick and Paul talked about it earlier as well. So, and many of you have as well in your presentations, but is there something you could pick out that you would love to kind of change before people kind of start into that digital transformation and kind of using AI-enabled tools, and how they can actually get it from pilot to scale? And maybe we just run down the group from the end, if that's okay. Sorry.
Okay. I got two mics. Okay, just checking. Just make sure it works. This is something that I've seen succeed and fail, and it really, back to some of the points I made, is that when it fails, it's so hard to get it back again. So with pilots, I think that the key thing from my perspective is number one is what's it going to change? So a pilot can be successful, look great, but is it going to change how the business runs, or is it going to make an improvement? And I would go to, if you look at pilots and capital money, and you got to have a budget and you got to spend, right? And I always look at who makes the decision on the spend. It's the CFO or the finance person. And I'd always look, and sometimes it's not possible, but sometimes you can channel it up. But how is this spend of 5K, 10K, 15K going to translate maybe into the metrics that reach the finance person? And then when it comes to the next phase, oh yeah, I saw what you did there. made some improvement. I saw it coming through in the metrics. Now, it's not always possible, but always look for who are all the stakeholders involved in this, right from the operator, say that's running the machine, say, I tried that, it was great. And make sure, back to my point, is you engage them so they're part of it, so then they become a promoter, and when they're asked, and a very good senior person will come down and say, how'd you get on with that? And if they haven't been engaged, you're not going to get a great answer. If they have been engaged, you will. So it's just making those connection points, but the key thing is what's it changing, and then and try and map it to the stakeholders, what they're looking for.
Yeah, I just echo what Tim was saying there. I think the onus for a successful pilot should lie heavily with the company that's doing the work, right? So if we are just relying on our clients to make the pilot successful, it will not be successful. They don't have the knowledge, the know-how, then they're too busy manufacturing drugs, right? So we should take a lot of the risk out of it for them by, again, going back to what Tim said, is making sure we're engaging all the stakeholders and we do all the fundamental work before we push the pilot in. And I keep harping back to this. There's some very good salespeople out there in the world, right? I wish I was a bit better, who can sell these solutions, who in theory work, but in reality they don't, because again, the manufacturing plant has not done the groundwork, right? So again, going back, just to reiterate again, the onus should be in us and our organizations to make sure the pilot works by making sure that the groundwork is done first.
Yeah, and I'd kind of add to that as well, making sure that the groundwork is done, but also making sure that what was delivered in the pilot can actually be used in the next. So like any digital solution, you want to make sure that if you spend money doing a pilot, that the value is actually brought into the next phase. So making sure that the master data, the structures is all transferable, but also scalable, and going from there. So that, like, it's hard to add to what these guys have said, but that's maybe the element that I would add.
Yeah, I would agree with practically everything there that was said. One of the things that I think is very important in a pilot is that the operators who use it on a daily basis are involved in the project, and sometimes they're not. So the engineering team, as Tim said earlier, they get involved, they decide this is the way it's going to be, and then they implement it and they find it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. And this happens not just in manufacturing, it happens in IT systems that come in and all of that. And the other area that's very important is what level of digital transformation readiness are you at to get systems working? Because a lot of people find that a lot of the legacy systems aren't capable to actually take this information, or the vendors are not willing to give that information, or if they do, they'll give it at a very high cost. So these are the types of issues that you're challenged with.
That's a very interesting point at the end there, Mark, as well, of kind of, and maybe there's a little bit on pilots as well, of just kind of some of the hidden costs maybe of when you start to peel back the onion a little bit, and you could kind of find some more challenges there. I think there's definitely a piece here, sorry, glasses on, glasses off. There's definitely a piece here with pilots as well that's around scoping, and being quite clear in terms of needs and context and identifying value, just to echo back what you've been saying as well. And particularly maybe, Mark, for you, I might come to you on this one, is, scoping programs better to include integration testing from the outset. You're talking about your operators, your people, who are going to be interfacing, say, with the equipment and the different platforms. So how can we scope that better?
Well, we developed a product that does integration earlier in projects. We feel that there is an opportunity there, because most of the integration challenges happen when all the equipment for a packaging line, for example, comes to site. And they then realize, actually, we forgot about this, or we never tested that, or we never had the ability to do this. So having that built into your projects early on, or more importantly, having the capability to integrate geographically in different geographical locations is a plus. And the product and the presentation from Sam earlier shows that we have that capability to do this. Building it into the project earlier means that you can actually build it into your contingency, and it allows project managers to get how could I put it, the feeling of this is going to work when it actually comes to site. And that's a lot of the problems or headaches from project managers are, this isn't working and now we're going to have another 2 weeks delay until we sort these problems out. So that's the way to de-risk it, build it into the project schedule and de-risk your project.
Perfect. Yeah. No, and you know, I think that digital interface, I think, you know, is a very specific challenge when items are coming to site. I know even for ourselves, you know, small pieces of lab equipment and integration, you realise 3 weeks' time is still sitting in a box because, you know, we didn't actually think about the piece we needed to think about of how it would integrate to systems, or it's the wrong version of the software is linked there. So I can only imagine when you take it to scale how to drive efficiencies there. Maybe Darren, Alan, or Dave either, you know, there's, what I have to say in your presentations, a lot of common sense coming through, and as we know, common sense is not that common. And, you know, we're talking about kind of maybe just getting the base right. You know, I kind of think about it, maybe sometimes we've data that's on a bit of a house of cards. Like we say, it's a little bit disparate. But is there kind of a surefire way to just identify value, maybe in making sure the manufacturing systems are robust enough to take the rate of pace of change? You know, we talked a little bit about debt kind of coming through there around data. Is, you know, sometimes you do have to bite the bullet, but are there kind of small pieces of work that maybe every company should be starting to look at and kind of go in the system? Is this at a level that's good enough to be able to take some sort of AI approach for it?
Yeah, and if you look, Bioform's, their digital maturity model, like we talked about, like, you know, Industry 4.0 scaling off, but the basics are there. So one of the key things would be, if before you go to your AI project, look and see what is your digital maturity. And that's a proven tool that people are using to see where they're at. So from that, then they can see what the current gaps are, and within that model as well, it has, like, you know, a scale of 1 to 5 for the advanced side, and guess or project where you want to get to, and then see what the gaps are. So that would be one tool to maybe use or utilize to see where you are now, where you want to get to, and what's the delta. Pass it over to you.
Yeah, so I like that we said common sense quite a lot, because the conversation about AI has lacked a lot of common sense. It again has probably got people overexcited in some aspects, and the expectations have risen above what can actually be delivered. If a client came to me now and said, I'm going to give you €1 million for an AI project, I'd say, fantastic. The first thing we're doing is looking at your digitalization, your unified namespace, and then we'll talk about AI. So it's kind of, again, replicating what Darren is saying there. It would give me more comfort as the solutions provider if we managed it that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, just a small comment on that is, when you look at putting all of this in place, is okay. AI, even in a technical company, you're there. Like, it's, you got to keep up with it. And it's you got, like, the developers know a lot more than I do. But when you come to putting it in place, it's not rocket science as regards. You want to put the data capture, single source of truth. It's all straightforward stuff. You don't need, you know, to go through multiple training courses for it. But and I suppose that's the key thing is just think about it, put all of these in place, and then when I suppose where it really kicks in is how you're starting to lay out that data and architecture in your database. That's where the real technical piece comes in. So even though it's mind-blowing, the basics are not that complex.
No, it's perfect. And yeah, I think that is that piece of just the demystifying around it. Tim might get you to hang on to the microphone there for me. So, you know, we've had some conversations earlier this morning as well. You know, we can't ignore the regulatory piece around AI, and nor should we. And, you know, I think even from the PMTC perspective, when working on the data analytics, the Foresight programme, you know, very much kind of thinking about the regulatory space was very front and centre in those discussions as well. And, you know, there is kind of information has come through from EMA, from the FDA around AI applications for them to be transparent, validated and continuously monitored. You know, we talked about the EU AI Act earlier, and Annex 22. But, you know, it should be a risk-based approach. But I think, and I know maybe from even maybe in discussions with some of our clients as well, it's, you know, we're not naturally fond of risk in the pharma industry. So, you know, are we overshooting too far to the wrong side in terms of thinking of AI? And how do we kind of clarify what's explainable AI, you know, and how can we help sites with that?
So just a few points. I think, first of all, if you look at in biopharma, you've got AI that's related to the transformation of the product, which is obviously highly regulated and critical, right? And then there's the other part where it's AI that helps you in the planning of your processes, right? So that's where you might use AI to procure better, AI to schedule better. So the risk associated, what I would suggest, don't put the same level of, you know, compliance risk, etc., on both of them, because you've more flexibility in the planning side, obviously not in the product side. So look at what you're doing and what's the regulatory boundaries around that. The second thing is, and whether it's in biopharma or not, and when I talk to my team is when you use AI, and say you think about it, if I get asked questions and I'm an operator, I'm an engineer or whatever, and if you can't explain what AI is after doing, and that AI has made a decision and you're not able to explain it, that's dangerous territory. And I think going back to the contextual data that I talked about, and I've seen this happen where when you're building up AI and if you're missing some data, AI can make it up. AI could fill the blank. And it could fill the blanks somewhere that gets you in really big trouble. So it's really important, I think. So it's what are you using it for and the regulatory associated with it, and then make sure you don't cross that line. And I do say for our software, I say to the developers, if you're putting code in that AI has generated and you don't understand it, we've gone too far. So there's a few points.
Perfect, thank you. And if anybody else wanted to jump in?
Yes, pharmaceuticals manufacturers are very risk averse, and rightly so. Okay, so I suppose what we try and do is de-risk it as much as possible. If we are doing a pilot, we won't be doing it on their systems. We will do a pilot with some of their dummy data on our systems, right? And we're showing you, here's the potential. So we wanted to make it as risk-free as possible. And even earlier on, I spoke about Kaisoft. We wouldn't have been able to trial that if there wasn't an audit trail built into it, right? Has to be. It's vital, because a pharmaceutical company won't look at you unless we can show why our LLM is telling you this answer. So I think that's just two of the things that we've tried to implement anyway.
Super, thanks.
I'd have to also say about the education program that the guys were talking earlier, like Alan delivers them. The auditors, they're more educated on it than we are in some cases. So, and they're like, you know, you look at the FDA when they're doing an audit, they're asking for your documents, they're using tools, they're scraping the documents, they're coming in with the bullets to shoot at you. So you need to be ahead of them, make sure that you have a good education program in place and that you can protect yourselves, you can do those tasks that they do on your own system and make sure that you have the backup when they do come in.
Perfect, yeah. And I think definitely that's a theme around training of our people, you know, fitting the right training for the right need, so they can actually talk about the value as well on what they're doing. Folks, I'm conscious I will keep talking here for ages, so I might just turn around to everybody as well and just check if anybody either online or within the audience has any questions, if you want to. Oh, thank you. I think we have a roving mic there, so if you just hang on for 1 sec.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick question. We talked about AI, but we're talking about AI as a unique thing or a single thing to do a solution for everything. But there is more to it. There's LLMs, there's ML and AI models, there's the usage for them and how to use them, and I think there is some level of education that needs to happen in that perspective to tell people AI is one thing, but you have to the panel has alluded to it, that there is different levels that you need to look at before you go to AI. But if you're going to a site and as a business you're trying to build a relationship to drive revenue for your organization, but and you have all of these challenges that you need to present to people. So what is the view for a pharmaceutical company and also the regulations? So what is the best approaches that you think should be utilized to build the best? And also mentioning there is education level that needs to be kept and needs to be driven, because we're all relying on AI. We're forgetting what we learned in school, and we're all relying on AI. So there's a big gap and impact that we're responsible for the future. Okay, and so what's the view of the panel and comments on that, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Just so I understand, so what you're saying is you're highlighting the risk that AI might be too reliant on at this moment in time, that the human, I suppose, brain has been powered down a little bit. That could absolutely be a risk in the future. But right now, I think the human brain needs to be powered up even more, because hopefully everyone understands that there are risks in implementing an AI solution. There has to be a human element involved when you are implementing AI. But as I said earlier on, why would any company implement AI if it's not going to benefit the human part of their business? So definitely there has to be that correlation between the human and AI. But it certainly might be a risk in the future, I would think, yes.
To add to that, I think it's go back to keeping it as simple as possible. Start off with map out how your organization is structured today. So from a architecture perspective, process perspective, people skill levels and maturity levels, and then say, okay, level set everybody, because often within businesses there can be differences between where people think they are and functional misunderstandings. Then what problems are you trying to achieve? Is it you want to cut costs, you want to grow your business or bring on new products, etc.? So what problems are you trying to achieve? And then map out that future vision. That future vision includes people, technology, where you want to get to, what problems you want to solve with it, and then what training do you need to bring people on that journey. And AI is changing so fast, there's no way you're going to be able to articulately clear saying we're going to get all of these AI things in 5 years' time that are going to transform. You know some of it, but it's going to change. But I think the key part in that plan is to make sure that you put the foundations in, that as it changes, the foundations are able to manage it. So there's just putting those basic things. I always try and bring it back to just keep it as simple as it can blow your head, right? So just try and keep it simple and structured. And in any of this stuff, these simple thought processes are a big part of the way of getting there. And yeah, that's how I would approach. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I think there's a piece here that we don't forget maybe some of the training we had, even right from school, right from working at the bench, maybe for any of you come from science background as well, is not to forget to be curious and not to forget to ask the why. And, is that actually right? What are your controls? Benchmark that for me. Show me where it's different. And, I think maybe those are skills in parallel that we still need to encourage and kind of drive along with this, because I think that's where we're really going to start to see a community of people who are asking great questions. And, and I think probably one of the reasons for Ireland is we're fierce nosy and fierce curious. And so just in terms of manufacturing, why some of our excellence has come through is also through that curiosity and through trying to make improvements and understanding the why. Or as I say to my team, we want to be the laziest group in the company. So what can we do to deliver value so we don't have to do those menial pieces, and we can focus the brain power on some really more high-powered, curious questions to bring us through.
So that's Tom Coleman from Astellas. Thinking about the law of unintended consequences, what is your biggest concern when introducing AI in pharma for each of the panelists? Maybe that's the takeaway message from that.
Perfect.
You don't need to read it again, or you plan?
Yeah, so it's thinking about what is law of unintended consequences. And I think maybe in some of the presentations, people have maybe alluded to that as not thinking about kind of the knock-on impact of where you make a change and how that impacts across for the industry, or how you take it up to scale. But is there anything anybody else wants to bring to that?
Yeah, like from our point of view, we're dealing with a lot of clients. So each site that we go to, each client that we go to, they have different rules and boundaries, or in some cases they have no rules or boundaries. So we're kind of so we have enthusiastic engineers, want to do the best they can, use the tools that are out there, but in some cases they're not allowed to be used on those projects, or they're not allowed to be used. So, and making sure that we can disclose where they have been used. For me as a manager, I'm probing them to make sure that they're getting trained on their local procedures for the client, making sure that they're compliant with their rules, because it'll come back on them, but it'll also come back on us. So that's the concern that I have being an integrator.
There's always going to be controls in place, right? So the onus again is not just with the manufacturer, but also with the company that's coming in to implement these solutions, to not get carried away, right? Sometimes they can get very excited about what AI can do and say, well, let's do this, this, and this. But they have to understand that there are certain parameters that they have to work within any organization, and they can't go outside of that. I think if they're clearly defined by the manufacturer, great. As Darren says, sometimes they're not. So that means that you might have to step up and say, well, you know what, this is probably not best use in this case.
Yeah, I would add just, I suppose, the way you set it up and the answers it's given you, in that you could do pilots, great, and you start building it out, but then some anomaly happens and something goes wrong, which can happen, and it's just, I suppose, I always think about the users, you go back to before AI, Industry 4, Lean, you get one good shot at it, and if it starts to drift and people, and we all see that happen in different places where it's great at the beginning and then something in the architecture starts to fail, but everybody's gone and it's running away, and then you go back and get frustrated. We're not using that anymore, or we give up on that. And that's the risk with AI, I think, because there's so many things, so many data it's pulling in, so many things, and if it gives one wrong answer and second wrong answer, then you just lose the whole thing. Or it could cause you compliance problem, it could cause you customer problem. So it's bigger than that, and we've dealt with before from a technology perspective. And it's just the risk, how do you make sure you cover all the bases?
And I think maybe one of the key things here, and maybe hopefully, Tom, that answers or addresses what you were thinking there. But, I think there's a real selling point here for using the right integrator to help you with this, and kind of not working on your own with it. Folks, I'm going to get the round up, aren't I? Yeah, finished, yeah. Can I ask one last question? Okay, one last question. And it could be short, very short answer from you all, and thank you for being brief. Is, the pace of technology changes, the pace that's happening, from digital point of view, not even just AI, but even just in digital itself as well, digitalization of everything we're doing. In 18 months' time, so if we were back here, what is 2028 you going to want to be talking about to this room?
For me, very simply, I'm a very simple human being. I like seeing nice graphs and all that. I want AI-powered real-time reporting, right? So that's again what I'm talking about with Kaisoft now, where you can pull data from your multiple systems. You're not dependent or reliant on any of the systems owners to get data. I think that's what I'd like to see, and that's what we'll be pushing anyway for 2028.
You and me both. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the golden batch, being able to predict or utilize that information and predict what the value should be for the next product or the next version of the product, and make it bigger, better, faster. And yeah, that would be using all that data. That's ideally what I'd like to see in the next 18 months.
To me, it isn't AI. I'm not an expert in AI. I can see all of the effects it's having. I think from a pharmaceutical point of view, a lot of companies are very old with their data. They don't have systems integrated. So in 2028, I would like to see more integration, digitalization, or transformation. And AI obviously is a part of that in the future, but most important, they need to get their foundations right.
And more generally, I think, so AI is new, there is solutions out there. So I'd like us to be back in a year's to 18 months' time, and we're talking about where AI has actually delivered and where it's starting to create that value. We've talked about that is still early stages, that yes, here it is, it's actually making a difference, and that we're talking more about, yes, this is going to continue to transform, and we've already proven in the last year, yes, this is working.
Absolutely. And look, we're very fortunate here as well, as the PMTC is facing into phase 3 here, that we can kind of continue on those conversations. We can continue building and communicating out to our membership as well around those kind of test cases, that we stop talking about case studies or pilot studies, that we're talking about at scale integration, which is really going to help us all and kind of that shared learning. So with that, can I ask everybody to show your appreciation to our panellists and our speakers today? Thank you.
Okay, folks, well, I think this slide says it all. It's to say at this point, thank you. Thank you to you all for attending. Thank you to our presenters from industry through the day who've shared their experience and knowledge, which has been hugely valuable. Thank you to the researchers who presented on their exciting research and sharing that with us. And then to thank Carol and Katrina and Rabah and Marcella, who've worked tirelessly over the last couple of months on all the numerous tasks that are required to prepare, organise and orchestrate this great day for you all to enjoy. So thanks to them all. Okay.